There we are.
Hello there. How are you?
There we are. I'm great. How are you?
I am still here. It is yet
You're
another week of winter here in Canada, but
still there.
I'm still here. How are you?
Wow. I'm great. Another Sunday, another Sunday fun day. You know.
Right?
Hey Jen. Hey Michelle. Hey Brenda. Nikki. What's
Hey,
up?
everybody.
What's happening? I gotta tell you, I do love it when we have a guest on because
Me too.
it gives my voice a break. It just,
Agreed.
agreed. Yeah,
Agreed.
it gives my voice a break. We put them on the hot seat. Let them go ahead and just kind of, spill their lives, their experience out, so everybody can enjoy it, and we don't have to say hardly a word. It's great.
I, I,
Um,
I always do though.
yeah, we always find a way to make something happen, don't we?
I always
It's
I
kind of
always end up
crazy.
talking. It's just kind of what I do.
Well, hey Meg, how's it going? Brenda, how's it going? Adam,
Everybody,
what's up,
welcome.
everybody? Welcome,
Welcome.
welcome. We
Thank you for
appreciate it.
joining us.
Yeah, it's great. It's a
Yeah.
good time. It's a good time. Now, this lady tonight, we're going to be talking to Linda.
Mhm.
Do you have her background? What do we need to know about Linda, Kate?
Okay, so number one, I just have to say Linda is a personal friend. So we
Wait a
we
minute. Wait a
met
minute. Wait
actually.
a minute. You have a personal friend?
I do. I do. Linda is not only a colleague, she's a personal friend. I actually met her on the set of Paranormal Survivor. So her and myself, as well as another consultant, Michelle
Okay.
DeRoche, were
Okay.
all asked to come in
Go ahead.
and do the Paranormal Survivor excerpts. And so that's how we met, and we became fast friends. And I gotta say, I love this woman. She's a pretty cool cat. She knows her stuff. She's been in the industry forever. I'm going to read out her bio really quick. Um, and so you guys can get the real version of the Linda. But no, she's a really cool lady. And I'm so excited to have her on the show because she's got wonderful stories, wonderful talent, and the
Hey,
woman
Jeremy.
knows her paranormal stuff. So, I mean, what better 90 minutes can we get, Richard?
Yeah, and it's great when you have people of that many years in the job,
Yeah,
because they were able to talk back to the time when this wasn't cool. This wasn't on television in 15 to 20 different shows, and it wasn't as widely accepted, and that kind of stuff is really something cool to hear about how that kind of stuff was managed back then. I mean, for
exactly.
me, it's going on 26 years, but I mean, not 41 as I read about her. So tell us about her, Kitty. Read her bio for us.
All right, you ready? So Linda has been in the paranormal field for 41 years and has experienced unexplained phenomena all her life. At 18 years of age, she began to investigate the paranormal while in college in her hometown of Montreal, and continued to research and investigate on her own until relocating to the Toronto area in 1986. From 1986 to 1981, she continued to work primarily on her own, investigating local hauntings and paranormal issues until in 1997 she became the assistant director of the Toronto Ghosts and Hauntings Research Society. Linda left the society in 2003 and once again worked freelance in the field, concentrating on investigating and researching local areas. After giving a presentation on ghosts and hauntings at the local library in Georgina, Ontario, the town where she now resides, Linda realized that the need for a paranormal team was very much needed. In 2012, she founded the Georgina Paranormal Society. Currently, Linda has an executive director of the Georgina Paranormal Society and appears on the television show, like I said, Paranormal Survivor, as one of the paranormal experts. She has appeared on many paranormal podcasts, radio, and local television shows, currently hosting a weekly cable lifestyle show. She's really cool. She does television as well, called Georgina Life. And her own hometown of Georgina, Ontario, Canada. Linda also lectures and gives presentations on the paranormal for various organizations throughout Canada. And she's a wicked seamstress. I'm just going to add that in, Linda, because the woman can sew anything. She's amazing. She's creative and makes everything. So
Cool.
that is the one and only Linda.
Wow, that sounds like a lot on a resume there. That's a pretty hefty
Right?
resume.
Yeah.
Um, it's amazing to me, and I like getting to know the folks from Canada because again, most of my experience has been down here.
Right?
We have a multitude of people that have been in the business, but I don't think anyone that I know of personally has been in business as long as she has, but it sounds of it. Um, and I'm always again interested in hearing how that kind of stuff started for them because it's different for everybody as we know, but it is also something to me that's very intriguing because again, back then it was not cool.
No, it was
It
very
really
taboo
wasn't.
subject. Yep, agreed.
So we're gonna like grill her with all kinds of crazy questions, or what are we gonna do here? Are we gonna,
I
just
can't wait.
kind of just nail her in the
I,
hot seat? What are we gonna do?
yeah, I want to hear her history. I want to hear about where it all started for her. I want to get into the nitty gritty of her first investigations and how it was done old school. That's what I can't wait to ask those questions.
Right. Well, we've got it early. Do you want to bring her on early?
If you're
You
ready for it,
think
I'm
she's
ready for it.
ready?
I'm
Well, let's
ready.
go ahead and do that. Let me get into the green room and yank her in.
So,
Let's
guys,
do
while
that.
we're waiting to bring Linda in, remember that we do simulcast. And because we
Yes, yes.
simulcast, I may not be able to see all your comments, but Richard can. So, if you have a specific question, I've got a couple screens. That's why I'm looking down. I'm not ignoring your comments or looking at other things. But if you have a specific question for me, please don't hesitate to put it in the comments and one of us will pick it up. Okay. Please be patient with your comments. Again, we like to kind of talk about that because there are so many comments coming through. We can't get to them all. So please be patient and we will try to get to as many as we can. Okay.
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah. So welcome aboard, my dear. I am so excited to have you here. This is something I've wanted for a long time and the universe was able to make this date work. And so here you are.
I know, and I'm trying to line up my camera here, and I'm like not very good at this. You would think that I
That's
didn't
perfect.
do, yeah, you'd
Thank
think
you.
I didn't do like a weekly show
Oh
on
God, you
Zoom.
know what? Your face looks beautiful. You look fantastic as per usual. So I read your bio, and man, what have you not done? Let's put it that way. What have you not done, Linda? Is there a place you have not investigated, or an entity you have not dealt with yet?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of places I haven't investigated, but honestly, the thing that I would love to do the most right now because of all the snow is go tubing. So that's as far away from the paranormal as you can possibly get. But yeah, I know. You were reading my bio and I thought that can't possibly be me. And then I thought, yeah, it actually is me. 41 years, which is amazing because I started in the crib, right?
You know what? It all comes down to, time is of the essence, but at the same time, 41 years of quality research, 41 years of having experiences. I mean, you can't take that time back. And Richard and I were talking about before you came on, like, what was it like? What kind of experiences did you have? How did it all start for you?
Well, it started really early. I mean, I had experiences when I was like 4 and 5 years old at the family cottage. So that's sort of how it started with me. And my parents never discouraged me from talking about them, which is really great. But I have to say, Richard, you were right. It was not cool to do what I do, back then. And honestly, like, oh my God. That's good. I used to talk about it in kindergarten and grade 1 and talk about, all the ghostly visitors that I remember having. And kids in the schoolyard used to say to me, oh, you're crazy. You're just weird. There's something weird with you, of course. And of course, the funniest thing is they would then, when nobody was looking, they'd sort of take me aside and go, okay, so like Linda, I had an experience and I saw something, and do you think maybe like you could, talk to me about this? Because I thought you were weird, but I don't really think you were weird. Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't cool, but at the same time, they were having experiences too. So I was kind of like this beacon of light for them, right?
But it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because I've said that so many times. People kind of boo-hoo the paranormal until you get them alone, and then all of a sudden now their personal experiences come out of the woodwork, and you're like, oh, so you just didn't want to talk about it. Now you want to talk about it. So now you've had a bunch of experiences yourself. I had a quick story. I had a committee meeting about filming in our show at a city-run facility, and you had to appear before the committee to do that. And of course, it was a bunch of these folks that just, I don't know, it's paranormal, and then the meeting's over, and the mayor literally comes over and he's like, can can I tell you a little something? And I'm like, oh, here we go. Here we go.
Here it
And I'm like,
comes.
yeah, here it comes. And he's like, man, I've been in that building and it's just, it's really creepy. And I don't know. And I really can't wait to see what you capture in there. I want to go through there maybe one day with you guys. I'm like, oh, up on the bench, it was a different story. Now,
Off the record.
interesting stuff. Yeah, interesting stuff. It really is.
Yeah, 100%. It's true because everybody
Yeah.
always thinks you're a lunatic until they realize you're not a lunatic and they have experiences too.
Yeah, I
my,
mean,
my favorite one is when someone comes to me and says, I don't want you to think I'm crazy. And I'm like, baby, I see dead people for a living. There is nothing that you could say that would make me think you're crazy. Really, from a
right.
paranormal standpoint, right? I don't want to say I've heard it all, but really that's what it comes down to. And I think that these experiences, each one of, Richard, myself, as well as you, I find that a lot of people that are kind of projecting the paranormal and projecting, podcasts and stuff, it all started so young for us. And we all have a kind of kindredship in the sense that it wasn't talked about, it wasn't rejected, but now we're able to speak our truth. And I, quite frankly, I think that that's one of the reasons why the universe made us the way that we are, is to be able to sit here and talk about it comfortably, because for every person watching, there's probably at least one or two that are not comfortable coming forward. And so that's why we create this environment. So it's really good to talk about your history and how you found it harder, because that's going to make more people want to come out and be able to not feel that this is so taboo.
Right.
Well,
And it's really not taboo.
No,
well,
not at
now,
all.
I mean, now it's so mainstream, right? I mean, everything's so mainstream. Everyone's talking about, getting this piece of equipment on air. They got, what, 20, 30 shows on TV now. And, it's all great and it really just incredible. I'm more of a techie, so I got a question for you. I'm more of a techie. I like the tech stuff. What stuff did you guys use 35 years ago?
Well, we used a lot of tape recorders. I'm talking about, the little what was it? Mine was a realistic one. And I
Oh,
think I
Radio
graduated.
Shack.
Yeah, remember that? And I graduated to, I think, a Sony at one point. But yeah, those 60-minute tapes or 90-minute tapes that
Mhm.
you had to kind of flip over. So we used tapes, cassette tapes,
Wow.
and we used, like now, we used our own senses. And if you are a little bit intuitive or psychic, that part of the equation wasn't as accepted back then as it is now. But if you were into this back then, you definitely were attuned to your environment, and that was part of the equation as well. But we used other things, not only tape recorders, but we used things like little AM radios, little tiny radios that we would take with us and put them between stations, and get the static, kind of like, I guess, an SB7,
Right.
really. But it was an old school SB7. And believe it or not, we were very successful with that. You just put it between stations, get the static, and every once in a while, you would get a voice coming through. And that used to freak people out all the time. But it worked because, again, you're dealing with frequencies. And even then, people understood that you could communicate because it was a different frequency.
Right.
So we used that. We used pencils and paper. We used chalk, of course, to sort of mark places. We used, oh gosh, I used to put Kool-Aid in my bag all the time because that was easily transportable. It was in its own little packet. So if we were, let's say, testing to see if things were moved in a particular location, we would throw some Kool-Aid down and then put a trigger object inside the Kool-Aid, of course, and see if it was moved. That was kind of fun. But just the normal stuff, cameras with flash cubes.
Oh my God, okay.
Right. We didn't have all that digital stuff back then. So it was old school. We kicked it old school. We did use things, for example, like dowsing rods. They were available back then. So and they didn't look anything like they do now. You can buy some real fancy ones,
Oh yeah.
but we
I
used the
made
wooden
some.
ones.
I
There
made
you
some.
go.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Simple,
we used to
simple,
make our own.
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
It works.
kind of what it looked like back then.
Well, one of our viewers, Dina Luna, said, "So what was acceptable back then?" She said, "Laugh out loud. I'm seriously asking what was acceptable." I guess what she's asking is what type of stuff were people willing to listen to? As far as, here's a reveal, here's what we saw and heard, this is what we think is going on. What were people wanting to hear back then? It was, I know now everyone's like, well, I just want confirmation. I just want, now. But I wondered back then how much stuff was acceptable. What was the line you had to step in front of yourself and go, I can't go beyond this with them because they'll freak out. What was acceptable?
It's interesting because not a lot has changed. The first investigation that I ever did was in Montreal, and it was sort of by word of mouth because we didn't have all of this internet stuff that we do now. So people knew that I was the ghost lady. So it was always word of mouth, right? It was like, oh yeah, Linda's into ghosts. Okay, and who's Linda? Oh yeah, she's she's that lady over there in the cafeteria. So they would come and talk to me, give me their phone number. We would call each other. So it was word of mouth. It was in a place called Hudson, Quebec, which is not that far outside of Montreal. And this elderly lady had bought a home and was having all kinds of stuff happening in the home. And back then, there was nobody to talk to. So she and I were connected through someone at the school that I was going to in college. And honestly, she just wanted to know what was happening. She wanted validation. She wanted someone else to experience what she was experiencing. Very much like now. What was acceptable now was acceptable back then, and vice versa. They wanted validation, and they wanted to know that they weren't crazy. And that's something that never goes away. I mean, in 1980 or 1982, as well as 2022, that's what people want to know. They want to know they're not crazy, and they want validation. And back then, it was exactly the same thing. And I was lucky because as I was sitting in her living room talking to her, this huge crystal ashtray flew off of the, yeah, it was crazy. It flew off of the mantle in this gorgeous living room, whizzed past my ear, hit the wall in back of me, and dented the wall. And that's when I knew, yeah, she's definitely, yeah, she's got some stuff going on.
Right.
Yeah. And it was validation.
That's not validation.
Yeah, no kidding. It was validation for both of us, really, at that point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, one of our other viewers, Chris, said, Linda, where did the concept come from about the AM radio and tuning between the stations? Do you know?
Well, it's interesting because back then I used to read an awful lot about the paranormal. And I used to read stuff like, for example, I think Wes Coleman, one of our friends, and I have this in common. There were books back then. Sheila Hervey wrote a book, Some Canadian Ghosts, and she wrote another book called More Canadian Ghosts. So I learned a lot about other people that had issues with ghosts and hauntings. And I read a great book by Lloyd Orbach, and he was one of the pioneers in the field of paranormal investigation. And that's when they started to talk about things like frequencies. And I would read everything. I mean, I'm one of those people that I read the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I tell everybody else out there to watch and read the good, the bad, and the ugly, where the paranormal is concerned. And even back then, I would read books like, for example, I read a book by Sybil Leek, who, of course, is, the official witch of Salem. And she was even talking about frequencies and spirit communication. So I kind of got the idea by listening to the radio and, kind of putting it between stations and hearing what I thought were voices. And my dad, who used to be a disc jockey and he loved radio, he would tell me, yeah, it works on frequencies, Linda. So, maybe Other people, maybe pets, they can pick up on different frequencies. So he was way ahead of his time where all of this was concerned, never laughed at me. And interestingly enough, my dog, Kippy, used to perk her ears up a lot when I would use the radio and put it between stations. So it's like she was picking up on different frequencies. And I thought, why don't I just bring this with me and see what happens? And I don't know, it was just an instinct that I had from reading up on all of this stuff. And back then, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to read, not like there was, or not like there is now.
Right.
But it was just instinct for me, really. I kind of feel like if you're in this field and you've been in it for a long time, and I think you'll both agree, it's kind of like a calling. It's something
Absolutely.
bigger than you know, and you tend to kind of, I don't know what it is. You know that this is something that you're doing for a reason. You know that it's bigger than you, and you do tune in to these little instinctive, I guess, tidbits of information, and you try certain things. I mean, I know, Katie, you like to play with your equipment and make equipment and try and deal with all of that knowledge that's somehow inside that brain of yours, but it's bigger than you. It's a calling. It's absolutely a calling. Yeah.
Now we have a couple questions. Dina was asking, so what was acceptable back then? Basically, when you first started, we'll kind of go back, rewind a little bit, no pun intended. What was acceptable in terms of, equipment, in terms of what was, was everybody pioneering and trying their own things, or was there a go-to, the certain recorders? And let's face it, going over evidence back then was a heck of a lot harder than the digital stuff we have today. I mean, how many times you'd have to replay, rewind, and do it again and do it again? And, the good old fashioned, I remember I went to school for music at a time where it was still analog. So we had these big analog reels that you literally would cut and paste. I know I'm dating myself, people, but that was the truth. And so, what did you find at that time period? Was that kind of the acceptable practice, or?
Yeah. Absolutely. There were certain pieces of equipment that were acceptable. Tape recorders, totally acceptable. The radio was a little weird, I have to say. People would look at me kind of strangely. Pencil and paper, using your eyes and your ears, sitting in a space absolutely quiet, trying to tune into the environment, totally acceptable, as well as taking pictures. And back then, we didn't talk about orb anomalies like we do now. We would try and capture things, for example, shadows. We would try and capture anything that looked like a mist. But orb, that was something totally different. And that sort of, that came, I guess, at me in, I'm going to say, the 90s by the time that was out there. But when I was doing it, it was to capture mists, it was to capture shadows, and hopefully you were going to capture something that wasn't supposed to be there at the time, whatever that happened to be. But those were good. Those are the acceptable things.
What is your opinion then? Because you've been in the field for so long, what is your opinion on orbs? What do you feel they are?
Well, like I said, I do a lot of reading, and I do a lot of talking to people about all of this stuff. And let's face it, you're going to talk to so many people in the field who say they're absolutely nothing. They're nothing but dust. They're nothing but, water droplets. They're environmental little things that you really shouldn't pay any attention to. I can say, after being in this field for a very long time, that in specifically haunted places, I have seen orbs with my naked eye. So I do know that they exist. I have seen them on film. I've seen them in pictures. And I've spoken with people who truly do believe that that is how they communicate with us. That is how spirit communicates with us. They come through in that particular shape, in that particular form. And if you look at the composition of them, if you really look closely, a lot of people do believe that they look kind of like DNA, pictures of DNA. So if you think about it, and you think about them being, if spirits are energy, well, DNA is energy. And who knows? I mean, I like to keep an open mind. I'm one of those people that says, hey, listen, you
Yeah.
have to keep an open mind, because until a dead guy taps me on the shoulder and goes, okay, so let me tell you about the nature of reality, I'm not
Right?
going to know. I'm not going to know the truth. But I
No.
do think sometimes orbs in pictures are nothing but dust. And I do think that sometimes orbs in pictures are nothing but environmental issues. But I do think that there are times that spirit can be there in orb form. I really do.
Absolutely agreed. I think that what a lot of investigators don't correlate, and this is something I mean, you and I have investigated together. We correlate our evidence. So we correlate the equipment. And to me, when you're getting an EMF spike, and for those of you, that don't know EMF is electromagnetic fields. And lots of times when, paranormal things happen, you'll get a spike naturally. In other words, it's not something electrical causing it. When you're snapping that picture, you're getting the orb, you're getting an EMF spike, you're getting a read off of a few different pieces of equipment. It's less likely that it's a piece of dust. A piece of dust is not going to cause those things. And I think as paranormal investigators, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this,
Probably.
but a lot of them discard
Go
that.
for it,
They
Katie.
do not take that into account. And,
Oh, I
and
know.
it's unfortunate because to me, it's not about one piece or another. It's about how they're all working in unison, or how one's, kind of validating the other, and so on. And so I think you're right in the sense that, yeah, absolutely, it can be both ends of the fence. You can't say it is or it isn't. You can only, kind of depict what you captured in that moment.
Yep, 100%.
Okay, we have a couple of equipment questions. Kat said, Linda, do you feel old school or equipment now is better, or do they just not even compare?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think we were lucky at the time to have what we had. And with the advent of, the personal video tape recorders and stuff like that, that was sort of exciting in the field for sure.
Okay.
But, I'm going to say that now we do have fantastic equipment. Not going to lie, we have really great equipment. But
Right.
back then, that was great equipment for us. But I'm still a real old school lover, and I do believe that our best equipment is ourselves.
Right.
And I do believe that our best equipment is the experience that we have in a haunted location. So, and having done this as long as I've done, I really have a problem with a lot of the equipment because, as you know, when you're investigating, they love to play with equipment. So your equipment is not as perfect as you think it is, because you could have batteries galore. You could have the best equipment possible. You could go into a haunted location with, a million feet of coaxial cable and a million cameras everywhere in a million locations. And if they're going to screw with your equipment, they're going to screw with your equipment. So
Right.
how good is your equipment when it doesn't work anymore? You've got to have a plan B, and sometimes you've got to have a plan C. So when you go in, equipment is awesome. And like I said, now we have fantastic equipment. I'm not going to lie. I think better than it used to be for sure. However, I think your plan B and plan C is to kick it old school. And a lot of new investigators don't understand quite what that means, because they don't understand the old school equipment. I mean, and you're right. Listening to, 120 minutes of cassette tapes back then was worse, I think, than listening to the on an SB7 for like 6 hours.
Wow.
So I hope I answered that question okay. But I really,
Yeah, I think you did.
God,
Now,
don't
Jen.
rely on it. Don't rely on equipment. God, don't
Yeah,
rely
right.
on it.
One of our viewers, Jen, asked if you've written any books.
I haven't. And my husband keeps, like picking at me, because he keeps saying, listen, after all those years, after all those places you've been, after all the things that you've said and all the things that you've seen, and why don't you write a book? So maybe that's something that I'll probably do in my retirement years, which are kind of looming, but shh, I'd
Nothing
like
for me
to.
on that.
Yeah.
Now, another viewer, Linda, has said, what is your opinion on the SLS camera?
Interesting. As I say, equipment is great, and I think the SLS camera has
Johnny.
merit. I do. And I think, we tend to use what I call the poor man's SLS, which, is the Kinect camera.
Right.
And I think the SLS has merit, but I do think that you have to look at your location. You have to look at your surroundings. You have to know exactly where you are. You have to have no interference. For example, you're using an SLS camera, perhaps that golf bag in the corner might be misinterpreted as being an anomaly or an anomalous figure. So just make sure that you know where you are, and you know how to use the equipment effectively, and you experiment with it so that you know what you're doing. I think in many cases, you can get false readings with pretty much anything. Although I do like all of this equipment. I think it's really fascinating. And the SLS camera, I think it has its merit. I really do.
I experimented and made my own SLS. And, I agree 100% that I do think that it definitely has merit. I think that a lot of times investigators, it's always one of the field or the other. And yes, it works, and no, it doesn't. And agreed that, there's times that it can work and it can't. But I think that it comes down to not necessarily the equipment, but how you use it. So in my experience, when I'm sitting down and doing a video session with the, spirits in the house, if a spirit makes its presence known through the camera, I'm going to ask them to move something. Can you wave? Can you stand up? Can you sit down? Can you, and that's giving it that much more validation when it asks you, or when it answers you, or it goes ahead and does that. Now, not only are you getting it, say, kicking its leg or waving at you, but then you get an EVP. How can you say that that is not truly happening? And so, I agree in the sense that you have to be open with things and you have to experiment. It's not always something so cut and dry.
No, and you also have to use equipment simultaneously. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. So it's not just getting the EVP, but it's also perhaps videotaping at the same time, or using your SLS at the same time, or using your SB7 correctly, or it's using all of these pieces of equipment at the same time to try and correlate the experiences, try and get validation in as many ways as you possibly can, not just once. Right. It's like you never go into a haunted location alone, because 2 eyes is not so good. 4 eyes is way better.
So may I ask, do you find that sometimes in your experience, the equipment has actually hindered an investigation? Have you ever gone back, or, you conducted it first, then gone back with equipment and noticed differences? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, people can rely too much on equipment. And I think if you're going into a home in particular, because we do a lot of residentials, like a lot of residentials, people really want that validation in terms of, the EVP, or they want, they want something that they can listen to, or something that they can see. But often, that doesn't happen, or it happens. You'll get a slight thing that'll happen, and that'll be kind of a validation, but not totally. I think that the equipment can definitely be a hindrance sometimes, and I also think that people need to pay more attention to their feelings and their thoughts. And I think that so many people don't understand that feelings and thoughts and impressions can really be validation. A lot of people say, well, I don't know about psychics, but psychics are amazing, because when you bring them into a location and they can validate things, they can tell you things about that location or about the experiences that the client is having without the client even saying anything. That, in my opinion, is more of a validation than getting an orb or, than thinking you have an EVP. Because sometimes you might think that you have an EVP, but you really don't. Or you might play it back 5 times and you might think that it's saying one thing and your colleague might think it's saying something else.
Right. We have a question. So Kat says, what piece of old school equipment would you suggest for a newer gen of investigator?
Ooh, I like that. Something, I really think that if you can pick up one of those little, and I don't know, I haven't really seen a lot of cassette tape recorders, but I have seen the smaller ones, the micro cassettes. I actually own one of those now, and I like those because I find that I pick up a lot more on the old style cassettes than I do on the digitals. I don't know why that is, but I find that I pick up a lot more on cassettes. I think if you can find something in a thrift shop or maybe on a garage sale or something like that, pick one up because you never know. It's a different experience. But I find that I pick up a lot more on the old tape recorders than I do on the digitals for sure.
Yeah. Now, Chris says the biggest problem with new equipment is most people don't use it enough before an investigation, which is so true. More times than most, they use it for the first time in the investigation, and not know the ins and outs of the equipment. I think that's such a great comment because you have to know what you're dealing with, right? And the cool thing about the old school method was there wasn't all the bells and whistles, and it was still extremely effective. So don't be afraid to go with a piece of paper, right?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Write down your thoughts. Write down what you're feeling. I always have a piece of paper and a pen because I always think, it's an instantaneous thing. If you're walking through a haunted location and you don't have that immediacy of the pen and the paper to write down something that you're thinking or feeling. You may not have the opportunity to click on your tape recorder at that point and go, oh yeah, so I think I see something at the end of the corridor, or I'm feeling kind of weird in front of room number 212. But you may think of just reaching into your pocket and taking out your pen and going 212, weird feeling, continue. So I don't know. I just think a piece of paper and a pencil is always a good thing. Yeah. I don't know. I just think it comes in handy, and most people don't think about that. And you're right. They don't experiment with their equipment enough. If you have a tape recorder that's brand new, if you have a digital voice recorder and you don't know how to play back, you don't know what it can do, then why are you using it? Why are you bringing it with you?
So may I ask, what are your opinions on things like Ouija boards and scrying and kind of the more, I'm going to call it taboo. We'll use the taboo version instead of the equipment or supernatural version of investigating.
Right. I've never really liked Ouija boards or spirit boards. And the reason I don't is because of the fact that we've always been, called into locations to fix things because people have been using them incorrectly. And I'll say incorrectly. I don't dismiss them. I think that they can be valuable tools in the right hands. And I think that things like scrying, I think that things like Ouija boards, things like tarot cards, things like runes, things like all of those pieces of divination equipment are valid in their own right if they're used by people who understand what they're doing and who can use them correctly. I don't like Ouija boards because they're readily available. Anybody can buy one. I mean, Parker Brothers, still makes them. You can still go to a Toys R Us and buy one and use them. Little kids can use them. I think that that's wrong. I think that, you really need to be educated in order to to use them. So, but I do think that in the right hands, they can be valuable tools. What's the difference between using a Ouija board and using, a K2 to talk to a spirit in a haunted location? There's no difference between the
No.
two of them. It's
Right.
just that you might be a little more well-educated. You may have walked into a haunted location and have protected yourself prior to going there. You might have said, listen, we're not here to harm you or hurt you, and I'm protected with the white light of God, if that's what you believe. And you have to go in with the right intention. So there's really no difference. I think that they're useful. I think that if you're comfortable using them, you use them correctly, you protect yourself, before you use them when you go into a haunted location. I see no problem with it. I just don't like it when people play with these things and don't understand why they're using them, how they're using them, and they're calling in what I like to call rogue spirits. And those are little things, little, we call them bibits, like little icky, horrible,
Parasitic.
horrible, right? And they can just attach, they can stay, they tell you what you want to hear, they get in your brain, they pick at you, and yeah, it's just not good. And you can call in these rogue spirits, so you got to protect yourself.
Now, Nikki asks, what's your feeling on the apps that are on the phones nowadays? I'm not a huge fan, but some aren't too bad, but research before buying, perhaps. What is your opinion on the apps?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think apps can be fun for sure. Apps can be a lot of fun. But again, you know what? Experiment with them. I think, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't really understand. It's like any electronic equipment. Spirits can play with anything. And some people out there will say, well, apps are crap. But apps are electronic and they're equipment, and spirit can play with them. So you cannot dismiss them entirely. I think you have to experiment with them. I think you have to use them. I think you have to go in with an open mind. And I think that, anything is valid if you use it correctly and if you experiment and, see what happens. I wouldn't, I wouldn't rely on them, but I wouldn't rely on equipment either. So I say, they're not terrible, but yeah, just experiment with them, see if they work for you, because some of them, I agree, are not fantastic, but experiment with them.
So Kat says, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Richard.
No. Just a quick question. I mean, you've been on television, entertainment television before, paranormal entertainment television. So is Katie. So have I. And we get this question asked a lot of us on the show. Do we feel that the shows on air now have hindered or have helped paranormal research as a whole? And we've had to answer that question in our belief. I want to hear your thoughts on it, since all three of us have actually been on these type shows.
Right.
What's your opinion?
Well, I think that by their very nature, they're actually not bad. And the reason that they're not bad is because they draw attention to the paranormal. They make it seem a little more mainstream, which isn't bad, because so many people out there have had paranormal experiences and they feel that they're crazy. They feel that there's something wrong with them. But if they watch a show and somebody else out there has had kind of the same experience as them, then there's that common denominator of experience, which makes it a little less scary for them. It makes them understand that they're not crazy. And it also, I think, brings it forward in that, people out there, if they've been having these experiences, it pushes them to maybe read more about it, talk to certain people about it. There might be a local paranormal group that they might want to reach out to talk about their experiences. Where I think that it does a disservice to us in the paranormal field is there's so many things, and I'm sure you've done it too. You're screaming at the TV going, why are you doing that? Oh, for God's sake, come on, man. Like, please, you're not supposed to do that. And you're screaming at the TV. I
Oh
think
yeah.
they use some techniques that are questionable. They do things that are just, I mean, how many times have you kind of rolled your eyes and said, seriously? Like, really? So they can show really horrible techniques. They can, yeah. And yet some of them show some really great techniques that even I want to try.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's half a dozen of one and half a dozen of the other. I think the techniques can be crappy, but the fact that they're talking about the paranormal is so good. So good.
Right. Right. And then, and I've tried to have conversations with people when they say, well, why didn't they make mention of that? Why didn't they do this on the show? Why didn't they do that? What a lot of people don't understand is the production company controls what goes on air,
Yeah.
not the talent. So, if we had our druthers, we go through, 24 hours with the audio and find every flipping EVP there possibly was, and want it all thrown up on air. You can't do that. That's on television. So, I think some of them have helped. I know I enjoy watching some of them now just to see the new locations they're going to. I think that's enjoyable. And I've been approached at a couple of buildings that I managed. I was approached by a show and I actually told them no. That didn't go over well with them, and I'm sorry, but it is what it is. It's going a certain direction. That's my only fear. That's the reason why I asked that question. I see a lot of it going in a certain direction, which I'm not really thrilled with. Again, that's just a personal opinion, but that's what I see of it. I think if it's going to be done, it should be done in truth. I don't think it should be done to develop theatrics. I don't think it should be done to, make a person think or hear something that doesn't exist. Yeah, it just be straightforward with it. And I'm just not seeing. I don't have a lot of faith in that anymore. And a lot of the the paranormal entertainment television shows out there now, I just don't have a lot of faith in it. Yeah, I do like the the methodologies they bring out, and I do like some of those methodologies, and I do like the locations they go to. I do like those. I'm just not real sure of everything being a demon.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Don't you love that? It's always a demon, right? It's always a demon.
Always.
Oh God.
Or the woman in white. Now, Kat Ward says, do you have any advice for investigators not to do? Like, what would you tell an investigator that's getting into, new to the field? What would you recommend they don't do?
What I would recommend that they don't do is go out and buy a whole lot of expensive equipment right away. I think paranormal investigators who are new need to do a little bit of research, start out slowly, maybe grab a couple of pieces of investigative equipment and learn how to use them really, really well. And honestly, I think just take it easy. I mean, and I know that you can't go out every single solitary day or every single solitary weekend on an investigation. I mean, there's a difference between being a paranormal investigator and being a ghost hunter. I mean, if you're going to be out there every single weekend going, and trying to look for ghosts, that's very different from being a person who is called upon to help and to go to a home and do an investigation, or go to a business and do an investigation. It's very, very, very different. Not that I'm saying that you shouldn't, experiment with your equipment. Great idea. Go out a few times a month and take those new pieces of equipment and try them out, see how they work in different environments. I think that's really important. Don't do it in your own home, because I have had investigators in the past who have experimented with their equipment in their own home and have stirred up a lot of stuff, and that's never a good idea. Yeah, right.
I think, Linda, for all of our friends from around the world, Linda and I both reside in Canada, and in our province, there isn't a lot of public haunted locations that you can go in and pay to investigate it. And we have been in a couple. However, there's not the abundance that's in the States. And so a lot of the investigations, Linda had reiterated it earlier, but a lot of the investigations that we do conduct is families contacting us and asking us if we could come in. They think that they're fearful, they think something's going on, and it's our job to not only validate that there's a haunting, but debunk things that aren't hauntings. And so we have to have a little bit of a different approach on things. So that the term ghost hunter and paranormal investigator I take very seriously as well, because there's no slight against either title. It's just the way you go about things. So that's just so all of our viewers know.
So as long as you don't call me a ghost buster.
Right? Who are you gonna call, Richard? Who are you gonna call? So funny.
And it's true, Katie, we don't have a lot of places that we can go and hunt for ghosts, not like the States. It's the most incredible place, or even in Europe, they have a lot of places that you can go and you can go and hunt for fun. We don't have that. We really don't.
And I've been trying to drag Katie down here. Eventually, when they open up the border, I managed.
I'm going New Mexico. I'm going to Pennsylvania. I'm going to Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia. Where else am I supposed to? I'm going. I'm telling you, I will go. I'm doing it.
I know. I mean, you gotta come see at least my 3 locations. That would be a plus.
It's happening. Now, Nikki says, I would venture to say any piece of equipment is only as good as the person using them. Perhaps. What would you say to that, Linda?
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. I think that in this field, like any other, we do have investigators that are rogue investigators, right? They maybe don't use the equipment as well as they can. Maybe they don't experiment with it as well as they can. And I totally agree. I mean, I think you're only as good as how you're using it.
Exactly. And if you're not knowledgeable about it, then you can create more damage than good. Now, someone asked, do you make your own equipment? Do you make your own equipment, and do you use it? Have you experimented making your own or tweaked your own?
No, I've never, ever, ever made a piece of equipment. I'd love to do that. But you know what? I have never had time. I know that sounds crazy, but I've never had the time to, because although I would love to make the paranormal field my only side job, I have so many side jobs that I actually do. So not yet, haven't made a piece of equipment yet, but that doesn't mean that I won't in the future. I've got a really cool team now who really wants to be innovative and wants to try new things. So I suspect that we're probably going to do that and make a piece of equipment, hopefully this year. You never know.
Well, when you do, come back on and we'll showcase it. Cool. Now, Adam Tipler says, Linda, what is your view on paranormal networking?
Paranormal networking. Well, I think that it's a good idea to talk to other people in the field, because we all have had different experiences, and I think it's really important. Whether or not I believe in the term para-unity is something, I don't know, because I think we all have opinions about that. I think we all have to agree to disagree, but we all have to have an open mind. But I do think that we should talk to other people in the field and network with other people, because let's face it, some teams are more skilled in one area and they have more expertise in that particular area, whereas others might be more skilled in something else. So I think it's important. Absolutely.
So somebody had asked, what's on your bucket list to investigate any place in the world? Where would you like to go?
Well, I've always wanted to go to Gettysburg, and I think it's probably just that whole idea of the fact that anybody who's gone there has experienced something. I think Gettysburg is so rich with all kinds of history. And I remember seeing John Sable. I don't know if you know the name, but he's a researcher, and he does what's called ghost excavation. And a few members of my team a few years ago saw him speak, and he talked specifically about Gettysburg and about the layers of experience at Gettysburg. So that's on my bucket list. And I really want to go to Europe, though. Like, I've always wanted to go to Greyfriars, and I really want to go to Europe. I want to experience some of that atmosphere too.
Yeah,
So
Europe is on my bucket list.
Absolutely.
We'll have
I'll go
to
with
go
you.
together, guys. What is your what's your opinion on table tipping?
Table tipping. It's funny because when I was about, I'm going to say 16, I had gone to a spiritual church in Montreal, and I'd never gone before. I'd heard about the spiritualist church, and decided that I was going to go with this friend of mine just to see what it was all about. And they were doing seances and table tipping the day that I had gone, believe it or not.
So cool.
It was very cool. And honestly, that is the only time that I've ever witnessed table tipping. And I can safely say that nobody was moving the table. Nobody was physically picking it up. There was nobody underneath the table with the head, kind of lifting it up. It was absolutely, as far as I was concerned, bona fide. So I believe that you can do anything with energy. And that was, I think, the lesson that particular day was energy. And why not? I think it can be legit. I think a lot of things can be legit if people are tuned in to the energy around us. There is so much more out there than we are ever going to know about. So
Absolutely.
I totally agree, and that was a cool thing that I witnessed.
So let's dial it back a little bit. Let's dial it back. Tell us about the scariest investigation or the most memorable investigation that you've ever encountered, you ever had.
Oh my God, where do I start? Well, you know what? I think one of the most memorable was going to this home in Mount Albert. And this lady had been, and it's Mount Albert, Ontario. So it's, I'm going to say about an hour north of Toronto, northeast. Beautiful old homes there, a lot of history, tons of history. And this lady had reported seeing things in her home. And it was an old home, at least 150 years old. I mean, that's not, crazy old. I've been to Salem and stayed in an inn that was 300 years old. So, but yeah, it was crazy. But 150 years old, this home. So it was very old. And she kept seeing what she described as an elderly lady upstairs. The elderly lady was in the bathroom, would scare her sometimes. She'd sort of pop in and out. So she was really concerned about this elderly lady and wondered why she was there. So we asked her a lot of the questions that you would normally ask, and she couldn't answer because she was so scared. You know how people are when they're terrified. It's hard for them to answer questions. And we asked her to maybe keep a log of when she saw this old lady, and she said, no, I'm not doing that because I'm afraid that if I write it down, she's going to see me writing it down and she's going to be there. And people, when they're afraid, they don't often want to follow directions that you normally, as an investigator, would ask them to do. And I understood she was terrified. So we arranged to go in and and do this investigation overnight and see what happened. So we had little video cameras set up, and I'm going to say, well, at this point, I was actually doing this investigation with a couple of other people as a freelance investigator. So we had set up some cameras on the landing upstairs where she claimed that she had seen this old lady. Now, put it this way, nothing happened that night at all. So there were three of us. One was upstairs. I was downstairs at the bottom of the stairs because she would often see this lady coming down the stairs. So we thought, oh, well, we'll just park at the bottom of the stairs, see what happens. I would say that this investigation was probably the most memorable because it was the only investigation that I have ever been on where I have seen a full-bodied apparition. And that blew me away because I was at the bottom of the stairs with this other girl, and we had our pieces of paper and our pens, as well as all of our stuff. And 5 o'clock in the morning came along and we were tired. Nothing happened. And we said, okay, that's it. We're just putting it all away. We need a coffee. We need to get out of here. This is insane. So we packed everything up. And the moment we packed everything up is when the temperature dropped.
That's so good.
Always.
Oh, okay.
You could see your breath. And all of a sudden, this elderly lady came walking down the stairs. I mean, as solid as you or me. And she just walked down those stairs. But the weirdest thing was she had no feet. She had no feet. So she stopped at the calf. And she just literally walked down the stairs. She glided down the stairs right out the front door, which was closed. And I looked at this girl and she looked at me. And I said, don't say anything. Write down what you just saw. So we both wrote down what we saw and we exchanged notepads. And she saw exactly the same thing, except her response to it was not my response. I was like in awe. I was transfixed. And she was like, oh my God. She was shaking so badly. And I was so calm. It was the weirdest thing. But that, I think, was the most, I guess, striking investigation in my mind that I've ever been on, because
you know what, we're getting comments, I have chills. Nope, I would be gone. Nope, people are just like, oh hell no.
Right.
So I mean, what do you do in that moment? Do you freeze? I mean, I think you reacted perfectly. I don't know, as though I wouldn't have. I probably would have been booking it. But that's really cool.
I was in shock.
Yeah. There was a really great question here. Where did it go? Do you believe there is a parallel universe that is bleeding into our own? And are we seeing things that are from different dimensions? Ooh, so dimensional shifts. What do you think about that?
I think that's really interesting. And I think that could be true. And the reason I think that could be true is because I've spoken to a lot of people in my time who've told me that they truly believe that they experience, now I'm going to call it people peeking in. Now, I think you'll know what I mean by that. They've experienced that people have peeked into their own reality. And I think that can be true. I think that when people are dying, perhaps they're on their deathbed, they experience that more than, just a regular person who's, brushing their teeth, and then maybe Aunt Mabel comes in and says hello. But I think that could very well be true. I've read about it a lot. I think that, I don't know. I just think that it could be true. And people have said to me that they truly believe that there is a parallel universe. There's a what if universe. My husband believes that, what if we hadn't gotten married, what if? And I think, hey, listen, as I said before, you've got to be open-minded, because we don't know even, an eighth of really what this is all about. We can only surmise maybe, but we don't know. We have no idea.
Richard often talks about it as a thimble. What we know is inside of a thimble, right? That's your saying is true.
Right.
And Mario had a question. He said, do you ever feel that lines between the paranormal and supernatural blur quite a bit? For example, a report of a shadow person visiting a person in the night versus what could be alleged or possibly be alleged as a gray or alien entity. That is a good question. What are your feelings about that?
I think that they do blur. And one of the reasons they do is because, everybody's perception of what happens in their own, universe is very different. I mean, I know, for example, up here, we have people that have said that they've experienced what they describe as a skinwalker. Now, we have a lot of indigenous people in this area, um, and they do believe that they experience what they think could be a skinwalker. And other people don't look at it that way at all. They believe that it's an alien, that it's not a skinwalker. A skinwalker meaning, something of an indigenous nature that has come to warn us about things that are happening in our environment. And yet some people believe that they're aliens, because we do have a lot of UFO sightings in the area. So I think you're right. I think you walk a thin line between what people might believe it is and what it might actually be. Yeah, I think there is a thin line, but I think that's where reading about all of this is so important, and educating yourself is so important. And especially when you're in this field and you're dealing with so many people with so many, religious persuasions and so many cultural persuasions as well, you've got to be on your best game. You have to understand what you're dealing with. I mean, if you're going into a home or a location where somebody is very, very Catholic, you have to understand what they may perceive as being maybe an angel. I saw an angel standing next to me, or I saw a demon standing next to me. You have to educate yourself and say, well, gee, okay, from their perspective, it probably looked like a demon. It probably looked like an angel. Whereas if you were walking into a home with, let's say, the inhabitants who were Wiccan, they might look at it differently, and they might say, yeah, it wasn't a demon. It was, I think it was an elemental, because I did some work in my backyard recently, and this thing was really tall and it kind of looked like a tree. So I think it might have been an elemental. So, you have to understand that there are parallels. Yeah. And you are walking a fine line. So I think that was a really good question.
Yeah.
I like that question.
And perception has a lot to do with it too. I mean, people's perception, as you talked about, belief systems, faith systems, it just depends on what you believe in.
Yeah.
Because down here in the south of the US, there's a lot of blurred lines on what we actually see in this field every day. And I combat that quite heavily every time I go out in the field. But it's just, it's everybody's perception is different, and perception means a lot to them.
100%.
It really does.
100%.
Yeah.
Now, there's been a few people in the chat that are commenting that they're hearing EVPs, and we get this a lot, Linda. When Richard does shows, we'll get the viewers coming in and saying they'll actually give us the minutes. They'll go back and give us the minutes and mark the minutes for us, because we get it all the time. Sometimes it comes from Richard's end, sometimes it comes from my end, and maybe perhaps it's coming from your end. But that's good to know. Thank you, guys.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Now, there was a great question. There's so many comments. Thank you guys so much for the comments. I'm really trying to keep up. There's so many. And they were asking about...
Katie's going for that executive producer role.
Sorry. Possibly with the increase of global energy, do you think that has thinned the veil?
Oh, gosh, yeah, 100%. I mean, if you even think about how many paranormal television shows there are, how many paranormal YouTube shows there are, how many people out there who suddenly have decided that, this is important. So I think, absolutely, I think there's so much energy around us. Think about it. I mean, we're opening up, we're 5G here and we're 5G there. I really think that, for sure. It's opened up everybody's perceptions, and, good on us, because we're realizing that there's way more there than, we can never even imagine. So I totally agree. And I think that, it's only going to get bigger. And I think people are even now coming out of the woodwork. I'm not saying that it's all good, because you all know that there are some YouTube shows out there, there are some television shows out there that you kind of go, okay. But
Right.
the good news is that at least these people are acknowledging that, there's something there, and they're acknowledging that it needs to be A, acknowledged, and B, understood. So that's a good thing. That's a good
Well,
thing.
it's kind of funny that because I've been asked this a lot. I know Katie and I have been asked this a lot. Do we feel that paranormal activity has had an uptick? They love using that word on TV as well, uptick in activity. And I don't agree with it to a point because I personally think that we've gotten so much better access to equipment on our phones, apps, for example. I mean, you got cameras, especially cameras on phones now, and you can just about do anything with. You used to take a case of equipment. Now you can just do on a phone or an app on the phone. And I think what's happened is a lot more exposure has been brought about. Not really necessarily an uptick. I think there's just been more exposure because of the access that people have to technology now to be able to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
good
is
point.
that kind of your thought too, or what's your thought on that?
Um, I think so, but I also think that people are capturing more than usual. Way back when we didn't have that technology,
Mm.
and people have cameras in their homes now, where they're monitoring their pets during the day. They've got those doorbell cams and things like that. So it's like, yeah, there's more exposure now, but there's also more technology, and people are noticing things more. I mean, we didn't have doorbell cams, for a very long time, and then suddenly everybody had them, but we're noticing more because we have them. So I don't
Right.
know. I just think, yeah, there's a lot to that though, Richard. That's a
Well,
good point.
then, Kat also brought up another point. Could it be that people's abilities are being awakened more now, and that is why some claim that there are more paranormal activity? I've had this conversation. We've had this conversation on the show several times. The statistic that's out there is that 68% of the people that are living in the world have a latent ability. They just
Sure.
don't know what it means, what it does, and how to manage it. We get that kind of question asked of us almost on every single show. So yeah, I mean, it kind of comes across to it's a lot more widely accepted now again to be someone who has a sensitivity or be someone who has empathic abilities, or even psychic medium abilities, any kind of ability at all. Now it's become cool, you know, to have that. Whereas before, you look like you were going to get thrown on a cross with a fire. So it's just kind of the way it works. I mean, because everything we do is supernatural. It's paranormal, and now it's just kind of one of, like I said, the water cooler conversations now are different. John's going to go fishing, and Jeff's going to go hunting, and Rich, what are you going to do? I'm going to go talk to dead people. It's just it comes across a little more accepted now than it has before. So I think we've kind of gotten to a point where people are just kind of, yeah, it's okay to talk about it. Oh, I still get those people down here in the South. Oh, you're one of those people. Oh, yeah, I'm one of those people. 24/7, I'm one of those people. It's okay.
Yeah. What's interesting is that I had a great conversation with a childhood friend of mine not long ago. And we were talking about the fact that, and this is so true, and I think this makes a lot of sense in this conversation. So many people now are taking courses in things like Reiki.
Yeah.
So many people now are taking courses, like they're doing yoga, they're doing all kinds of things, right? That really people would have thought was really weird back then. I mean, when I was, 20, I think I told somebody, I really, this yoga thing sounds really interesting. And they were like, oh, really? Oh, you're just weird. You're one of those weirdos. But
Yogi.
right? But now it's accepted. So many people are out there and they're doing things like Reiki, and they're doing things like, past life regression. They're doing things like yoga. They're doing things like Tai Chi that allow you to go inside of yourself and allow you to kind of, do that inner work that was not accepted way back when. And I think what it's doing is it's allowing people to maybe broaden their horizons a bit, open up their mind to different experiences. And maybe, maybe Kat's right. Maybe we're becoming a little more attuned to
Maybe.
situations and our environment and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a different world nowadays.
Oh,
I think-
absolutely.
And I think too, we're so blessed in this time to have the internet, in the sense that years ago, if you wanted to do research about paranormal, you had to go to the library, and it was at that point you would get a book out, and somebody knew what you were doing. Somebody knew at that first bit of judgment of going to the library or renting a movie or trying to watch documentaries. But we have something that if you feel like you're having a haunting or you're having an instant, you can Google it and nobody knows. And it's at that point that you find that kindredship with other people that are experiencing this paranormal stuff or experiencing these instances, and all of a sudden your brain, your perspective is broadened, and you don't feel as uncomfortable. And I think there's that camaraderie with it. So, I don't think it's that necessarily we are becoming more sensitive. It's the fact that we're allowing ourselves to tune into it. It was always there. We just didn't have that kind of extra step to make it happen.
Yeah, totally. 100%. I agree.
Now, Mario has a question. He says, I've always wondered about whether alien or UFO activity can stimulate more of an increase in paranormal activity, especially around ley lines.
It's a great question.
That is a really good question. Yeah.
No, we have the best questions. I'm telling you, we do. We do.
Oh my God. They're fantastic questions. I'm excited about it. Well, my team was actually talking a lot about, whether UFO type experiences and paranormal experiences are related somehow. They're interrelated. And we've noticed that if we get a report of a UFO sighting, or let's say, because we have specific areas that people will report UFOs, or they've seen an extraterrestrial, or what they describe as something that's extraterrestrial in origin. A couple days later, we'll get reports of paranormal experiences, which is interesting. It's almost like, that frequency has been accessed in some way. And then it allows other things to come in. It's like, your little radar goes up or your little antenna goes up, and it's kind of inviting all kinds of things in. So yeah, and we here are near water. We're surrounded by water, and water, of course, is a major superconductor of all of this stuff. And people here, again, we've got the indigenous element, we've got the water, we've got specific areas where this stuff has happened. So I'm convinced that there are, ley lines that are definitely coming into play here as well. So yeah, I think all of that is true. I think all of that is like this major soup, right?
Yeah, I think it all plays together as well, and I've had a lot of people, for example, we talk about, Bigfoot. That's a big thing here in the States, Bigfoot. And there's such a controversy behind it because, people look at, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars invested in equipment to be able to find it. And what it really is, to me, in my experience, is simply nothing other than energy being. I mean, and you'll get people that argue you all day on that thought, and it's just kind of interesting. The energy builds and the energy builds, but I'm a real big believer on energy breeds energy. So whatever energy you got will breed another type of energy. It's the same thing when you have a team. We've talked about this in some shows prior as well. You have a team, and some of the team members' energy is way off. And that energy will breed energy in your investigation.
Yeah, that's really true.
And it's to me, it's just the way it is. Energy breeds energy. So yeah, I mean, if you're having, alien specific activity, there's no reason to doubt that it's not going to get an increase in paranormal activity.
Well, that's really
because
true.
of the energy. Because everything is an energy. Basically, everything is energy. So I think that's the point, but I think that's the direct point, is that you're going to have an uptick in anything when you increase the energy level, no matter what the energy is.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And we've actually blown through almost an hour and a half, guys.
That's crazy. Good times having fun. So Linda, tell us, where can we find you? Where can we find, you're so knowledgeable. If somebody has more questions, if somebody wants to learn more about paranormal investigating, where will we find you?
Well, you can find me at Georgina Paranormal Society on Facebook, or you can find us online. We have a website, georginaparanormal.com. And you can find me on Twitter at Georgina Ghosts. That's another place you can find us. Or, just look me up, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody. I love this. I'm passionate about the paranormal, as you know, and I know both of you are too. And I have to tell you, this was a fabulous experience because
Thank you.
loved all the questions, and you two are just so fabulous. Thank you so
Well, thank you. Checks in the mail. Thank you very much. Checks in the mail.
We'll talk money later.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll talk later about it. No, it's been a pleasure having you on board. We appreciate it very much. Your experience level
Yeah.
is incredible to listen to, and I thought I'd been in it long enough until I heard your background. I went, oh Lord, no. I feel like I've been in it that long, but I haven't yet, personally. But it's just been a real pleasure having you on board.
Thank you. Well, anytime. You know where I am.
Well, we do, and if I can't find you, I know Katie can.
Oh, I
Yes,
can
you
always
can.
find you. You can't hide from me, Liz.
Yes. Oh, no.
A couple other quick questions before we go. We have people asking, do you do Paracon? Are you going to be going to the States at all? What, you do informational sessions. So are you going to be pushing that, or what's happening this year?
I've never been to a Paracon. I just did, it's funny, I just did a show called The Paranormal Pride with Denise Pridemore, who is one of my friends, amazing lady out of Kansas. And she used to be one of the tour guides at the Sally House. So she's done so much in her life. And she just asked me the same question. She said, so are you going to go to a Paracon? Because I would love to go and see it at a Paracon. And I'm like, yeah, well, I've never been invited to go to one. I would love to go to one. And I think, as soon as borders open up and I can get that, I've got a passport. It's like, it's empty. I need to fill it up.
So, yep, exactly.
I want to go for sure.
Yeah, I feel rather spoiled down here in the States. Like I said, I managed 3 different properties myself, and I feel rather spoiled because I just did an entire event last night at a location. And I hear Katie all the time go, man, there's nothing really going on here.
Nothing.
And I'm like, I feel so bad.
Nothing. Like, it's nothing.
Zero.
That's horrible. That's absolutely horrible. But again, thank you very much for being out. We're going to go ahead and let you have your night. But we will talk again. We'd love to have you back on.
Absolutely. Anytime. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Great.
Not a problem.
Always.
And you have a good rest of your night.
You too. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye. Wow. Cool. Great show. Great guest.
That was amazing. She's got so much grace and so much knowledge, and she's always got great energy. So, I mean, it can't get any better than that, right?
No, it was a good show. Very laid back, very casual, a lot of information. Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of comments. My God, we had a lot of comments.
Great question.
Way too many for me to even try to keep up with. But I'd love to have a lady like that back on again. I think that was a really good show, and I think she enjoyed it as well. I think our viewers actually enjoyed it very much too. I was just really intrigued with how things were handled back then. I kind of figured this how it went. When you look at everything we have now, I mean, we have digital recorders that go on your wrist. I mean, come on, we've got all of this equipment in the world now, and they did it back then with magnetic tapes on cassette recorders. I mean, that's crazy. Because I'm an EVP guy, you know that, and it's just kind of, for me, is one of those things where you just kind of sit back and go, how in the world did you guys accomplish anything doing it back then that way? But that's all was available. There was nothing else available to them back then. And it's just, there were no EMF detectors. There were no static filtration devices, SLS cameras. We have to look back at that kind of stuff and go, man, maybe that was the better way sometimes.
I think using a little old school never hurt anybody. I think that it's really great to kind of put both types of investigating together and kind of utilizing the same. Experiment, keep experimenting. That's the key for all of this. Linda is refreshing in the sense that she's not afraid to get her hands dirty in the old school sense of the word. She can, pull out a pad of paper and do automatic writing, or you can pull out, an audio recorder and do an EVP, or do them both at the same time. And that's really, I think we really need to get back to the basics of investigating to bring it back to that. I don't think that we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the communication has increased over the years. I think the way that we can record the communication is a little bit better in terms of digitizing and all of those things. But bottom line, back then they were getting just as good of hits as we were here, in today's day and age. And so, to go back and forth and experiment with these different things, I think it's great.
Yeah, it is. And it kind of makes me want to go to Amazon.com and get myself a cassette recorder and maybe try that out. At the same time, I'm doing a digital set. You know what I mean? Just kind of see what I'm capturing, what I'm not capturing. The magnetic tapes have always been intriguing to me because the way that is done is that the vibrations from the music, whatever, actually lifts pieces of metal off that tape. So you can't reuse the tapes very often much before they are crap. But to be able to know that happens, and and to have that ability to be able to pull something that might be better than a digital recorder, it's pretty interesting to me as a guy who loves audio. That's really interesting to me. I like that a lot, actually. Reel to reel. That's another one. Somebody was talking about, cats talking about reel to reel. Wow, that's just absolutely crazy. I could not imagine it. But when you watch movies like Poltergeist, for example, and they were using that type of recording back then. That's what they were using when the movie was made, and that's what paranormal investigators were using. And it's so archaic compared to now. It's so archaic. It's dinosaurs compared to where we are now.
Well, think about the white noise theory. I mean, white noise, they started that in televisions. That's when they really started doing that white noise effect, where they were playing it through stations that were not coming through, and that's where they were able to get these recordings coming through. So I mean, we don't, a lot of times, to have a tube TV is a little different these days, but if you can get your hands on a mini tube TV and try it, why not experiment with some of these places?
Well, you could get one of those now. You can get a tube, CRT tube television now for like $5, 40-inch TV for like $5. Nobody wants them anymore. So you can do that kind of stuff all day long. The Radio Hack, the Radio Shack hack, as they used to call it, where you used to be able to hack the AM FM radios and pull the tuner out of them. So, that way they're just nothing but straight white noise. You know what I mean? And, those kind of things are just, there was so much that you had to do back then. And to me, I'm an equipment guy. I like the bells and whistles to a point, but they didn't have anything, nothing. They relied on their senses. They relied on audio. And some 8mm, I'm sure, 8mm cameras back then. It's crazy what they didn't have and what they still did with it. Kind of nuts. But we're at the end of the show. It went quick. That's for damn sure. It went real quick. Guys, we want to thank you for coming out tonight. We also would like to thank you, if you wouldn't mind sharing the show. I noticed Penny Hurst said that she shared it. Thank you very much, Penny. We appreciate it. Let this lady's experience get out, guys. Share the show and let people like what she's done. Listen to her experience and the things that she's accomplished. And I think you might find that a little more fascinating than some other things around now. But it's just interesting stuff for me. That's the way I look at it anyway. I think it's a very cool opportunity to have people have that level of experience.
Absolutely.
Come out on the show and
the pioneers.
The pioneers. You're right. The pioneers. Well, guys, we all love you very much. We appreciate you coming out. Again, please, if you like the show, please share it. We'd appreciate that as well. Until next week, We will talk to you soon. Be good to each other and have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.